Hello everyone. Today we start with our discussion on the topic ethics, integrity and aptitude, that is GS paper 4 part of your syllabus. See, if we talk about the GS paper 4 part, basically you could look at the syllabus of GS paper 4 and you can see the components of it. The syllabus of GS paper 4 can be divided into three components or three subcomponents. The first component of the syllabus basically deals with certain things or certain topics which are a part of psychology. That means generally this is something that you study in psychology, but it has been kept as a part of your GS paper 4. And you can understand this if you look at the topics such as attitude and emotional intelligence. You are able to understand why it has been kept as a part of your GS paper 4. So when we look at the syllabus per se, what is the syllabus or what is this objective of the whole paper? The objective of the whole paper is that UPSC wants to test candidates and civil servants with respect to what attitudes that they hold, and UPSC wants to predict what kind of civil servants we are actually going to employ. So even before getting into civil services, you are tested. No, you are tested even before you get into civil services, because through these topics, the questions that are asked, they are asked in such a manner that they are able to predict the attitude of an individual, an aspirant. They are able to they are able to get to they would be able to get to know what emotional intelligence, whether you possess it or not. Now, having the right attitude and having a certain level of emotional intelligence is an absolute must when it comes to a civil servant. Can you think of a civil servant who does not possess emotional competence or emotional intelligence? ऐसा नहीं हो सकता है. If you actually are a civil servant, you are a civil servant, you need to have emotional intelligence. So, though this is something, though if you look at the syllabus of it, you will find that it overlaps with psychology. But the reason for it being included here is that it is able to predict the very nature of, the very behavior of, the kind of attitude and the kind of emotional intelligence that the aspirant possesses. So this is psychology, and to a certain extent it has been included as a part of your syllabus. The objective is to predict the kind of behavior that the aspirant has, what is the kind of emotional intelligence that you possess. See, the other two parts is, if you look at this is the administrative component. This is the administrative component of your syllabus, and you will find that there are two topics called as aptitude and foundational values of civil services. Aptitude and foundational values of civil services, which has presents the these aspects of the syllabus, like values such as integrity, impartiality, non-partisanship, objectivity, dedication to public service, empathy and compassion towards weaker section, etc. And the topic called as probity in governance. Now these two topics of the syllabus of GS paper 4 can be classified as what? They are the administrative component. So here what you can say is that this is something called as administrative ethics. This is something called as administrative ethics. So this part of your syllabus basically deals with what? This part of your syllabus deals with how there is, or no, how can you actually increase the level of morality and ethics when administration or when taking up administration. So there are certain, there are certain ideas which can help the very, the very organization, public administration, the very organization administration to do what? Increase the level of morality. And hence this has been, this is also a part of your syllabus. This is also considered a part of your syllabus. And then comes the most important part, that is called as the philosophical part. So you will find that out of the whole syllabus that you have, a lot of ingredients of GS paper 4 comes from philosophy. So you will find that there are topics such as ethics in human interface, contributions of moral and contributions of moral thinkers and philosophers from India as well as in the world. And there is a topic called as public service values. Some part of public service values comes from philosophy. Some, like, when we talk about conscience, when we talk about how rules, laws, they can bring about, what you can say, bring about ethical and moral standards in the organization. Some part of it is also, it also has some kind of overlap with administration, like when we talk about governance, ethical and moral values, strengthening of ethical and moral values of governance, ethical issues in international relations and funding, and corporate governance. These are certain topics that you find that it is something that is that overlaps. It is something that overlaps with administration as well. Clear? So if you look at the syllabus of the syllabus of this very paper, the syllabus of this very paper can be classified into three: the philosophical part, the administrative part, as well as the psychological part. So we need to look at all these three aspects, and we need to understand that whenever we talk about GS paper 4, GS paper 4 is something that is very much interdisciplinary. It's not a very static part. It is interdisciplinary. Some components belonging to administration. So now there should be an input of administration and administrative ethics. Similarly, some components belonging to psychology. So an understanding of human behavior, predictability of human behavior, and predictability of human behavior in a manner so that it contributes to a more ethical and moral organization. And some philosophical aspects wherein we are going to understand, what is the very concept of ethics, trying to understand what is the meaning of ethics. What is the meaning of ethics? Do we consider ethics to be the same thing that we as citizens or as general readers, not a very not having a specialization, in the very idea of predicting or understanding what ethics is? So does ethics mean the same thing what we think ethics is, or it has a wide variations and it means something else? That is what we are talking about, the very philosophical part. So whenever we talk about ethics, GS paper 4 can be classified into three. The first part is psychology, the objective of it being that how can we predict the behavior of an individual, an aspirant, or for that matter a civil servant, as to whether he would perform ethical standards of behavior or not, whether he is moral or not. That is one part of the syllabus. The second part of the syllabus is administrative ethics, which means the key components of administrative ethics is what? The key components of administrative ethics is what allows or what leads to, what leads to ethics. So, what are the changes in the administrative procedure? What are the reforms? What are the changes? How can we bring about a more ethical standard of administrative behavior? That is the objective of the second part, that is administrative ethics. And the third part deals with what? The third part deals with philosophical. So, the very understanding of what is the meaning of ethics is something that we learn here. Clear? So, these three components have different objectives, and we need to adopt a different strategy to properly understand and deal with and comprehend these three different components. Clear? So, when we are dealing with the psychological part, we will be basically concerned with what? We will be basically concerned with predicting. Now, predicting and behavior, attitude, or emotional intelligence of an individual. Trying to understand what it is and trying to understand whether an individual possesses it, and if an individual possesses that, then what is the effect of that on behavior. Second, when we are going through administrative ethics, we are going to understand what are the changes, legal or procedure wise, what are the changes that can be brought about to bring about more ethical or better ethical and moral standards in administration. And finally, in the third part, that is philosophical part, we are trying to understand that what ethics actually is. So, as an aspirant, you will also get to know what you consider to be ethical. Is it ethical? Does that mean what ethics is? Or what your conceptualization of ethics is, what your conceptualization of morality is, and what actually ethics and morality mean? Are they similar or different? You are going to understand that as well. Clear? So the very idea behind the UPSC introducing this particular topic is that you as an aspirant are going to be judged beforehand. You as an aspirant you are going to be judged beforehand as to what are the standards of ethics and morality that you have, and as a civil servant, would you be able to properly handle the administrative situations and maintain certain standards of ethics or morality or not. This is the very objective. Clear? Now, while we deal with the very idea of, when we are dealing with this introductory idea, you should also know as to what are your requirements. That means, what are the types of questions that are asked and how do you deal with those questions? What are the proper requirements to score more in this very paper? So let us deal with some questions, and I will also give you some questions that were recently asked in the UPSC, and we will also try and decipher what is needed to answer such types of questions. Like, first type of question is that direct questions. That means here you look at the syllabus and the questions that are asked, they are basically replication of your syllabus. Like, if a question is what is empathy, how is it related to compassion? What is empathy? How is it related to compassion? And if you look at your syllabus, you would find that both of these, empathy and compassion, they have been mentioned as a part of your syllabus. So, what is the requirement in answering such questions? The requirement is that you would recollect the facts that you have actually learned. So, whatever you have learned as a part of your understanding of, जो भी आपने एथिक्स एज अ पेपर को डील करते हुए जो भी चीजें आपने याद करी हैं, जो भी सिलेबस को आपने लर्न किया है, जब आप इस तरह के डायरेक्ट क्वेश्चंस को आप वहां आंसर कर रहे हो, तो रिक्वायरमेंट बहुत सिंपल है. द रिक्वायरमेंट इज दैट यू आर गोइंग टू recollect those facts and write it there. Write it there. So you will describe, like in this question, first of all, you will describe what empathy is. You will describe what empathy is. And now, because it is a part of your syllabus, so you will, while preparing, you will learn what empathy is. And if this question is asked, you are going to replicate what you have learned in your, you are going to reproduce it in the paper. That is what is required. And obviously, compassion is also a part of your syllabus. Compassion is also a part of your syllabus. And what will you do? You will again, you will replicate the very idea of compassion there. And by a bit of analysis, you will also differentiate, or you will also mention the similarities between empathy and compassion. And if there are any differences between empathy and compassion, you will mention that as well. But out of the, suppose around 15,000 students are appearing for mains examination, around 10,000 of them who have prepared well for the examination, they have completed the syllabus. Out of all the 15,000, 10,000 of them are going to do this. 10,000 are going to do this. So what is the additional requirement that you have? That means, how can you be better than others? You can be better than others if you are able to not only recollect and reproduce the facts that you have learnt in the paper, but you are also able to give substantive examples there. If you are able to give substantive examples along with your recollection of facts, now this does what? This makes your answer a bit different than others. Not just a bit different, because just being different does not suffice. It is not just about being different, it is about being different and better than others. And in this case, not only are you different than others, but you are also better than others. Why? Because you are writing some substantive examples. You are writing some substantive examples. So certain examples that you might have read in the newspapers, certain examples that you might have read while reading certain books, certain examples that you might have read when you are discussing certain things with your friends, with your parents, with your relatives, with your colleagues, whatever you might come across certain examples, certain very substantive examples which you could use, and you can write it here. The 50% of the paper of ethics is done once you develop the knack of, or the capability of, writing and using your day-to-day material. That means, when I say day-to-day material, it's not just about reading books, because you will find that there are so many aspirants who have read so many books on ethics. They know about the thinkers, they know about what empathy, what compassion is, but they are still not scoring as well as the marks that are being scored by the toppers. Why? What is the difference? The difference is that the toppers have the capability to do what? Use substantive examples. The toppers have the capability to use that substantive examples, to use whatever material that they have read. Whatever material that they have read, or whatever newspapers they read, whatever whatever discussions that they have with their colleagues, with their parents, with their relatives, they use those and substantiate what they are writing. Like one of my students who scored very well, he, after completing his ethics paper, he came to me, and when I asked him that, in certain questions what he had written, so he described me that, while he was writing about, one of the questions about nationalism, so he used the aspects of fundamental duties and integrated the fundamental duties as a part of his definition and his conceptualization of nationalism. Now, when you have the capability to think like that, then you do what? You score very well marks here. So substantive examples, like when we talk about dedication to public service. No, dedication to public service. If you look at the syllabus has this. See, one of the part of your syllabus is what? It says dedication to public service. Dedication to public service. Now, in an example, in this COVID crisis, there was a particular, you must have also read about this example, that one of the doctors in the AIMS, he did what? He took off his PPE kit, and he helped a COVID patient survive. So, the kind of, his conditions worsened, and because his condition was such worse, he was not able to perform his duties properly. And in this context, he did what? He risked himself. Now, he risked himself to save the life of that particular individual. You must have read about this. And not just this as an example. You must have read about so many such examples. You must have read about so many such examples. Now, when you have the capability to replicate those examples in your paper, you can write about those examples in your paper. That is when you are going to score well. So if you get a question on dedication to public service, you can give the example of that very doctor. Or for that matter, there have been, like in this COVID crisis, there are some individuals who have appeared, who have got the national attention because of the outstanding work that they have done, like the actor Sonu Sood. The kind of work that he has done, it has been highlighted and it is outstanding. Now you can use those examples while writing. It's not just a news for us. Yes, it is a news for most of those who are not preparing for civil services, but for us, it is an example that we can use as a part of your answer writing skills. This is what it is. Clear? So direct questions are easy to answer but difficult to score well in. If you have the capability to give good examples, only then you are able to score very well in direct questions. The second type of questions are what? They are quotation based questions. They are quotation based questions, which now you can see the example of it. What? See, nature has enough for people's needs but not for people's greed. And it is a statement given by Mahatma Gandhi. Similarly, morality is an attitude towards those whom we personally dislike. Similarly, an unexamined life is not worth living. This is if you previous year paper, you will know in 2019 mains examination, this was asked. An unexamined life is not worth living. A man is but the product of his thoughts. What he thinks is what he becomes. Again, a statement given by Mahatma Gandhi. Now you can understand these are what? Quotation based questions. And what is the requirement in quotation based questions? The first is the understanding the context. That means if Gandhiji has given a statement, nature has enough for people's need but not for people's greed. What is the context? The context of this is that Gandhiji is talking about he is talking about environmental ethics. He's talking about environmental ethics. He was one of the foremost philosophers who basically considered that even environment should be a part of our ethical understanding. मतलब समझे? मतलब ये है कि अगर हम अपने if you judge my ethical standards or my moral standards, आप मेरे ethical या moral standards को कैसे judge करोगे? How I am going to behave with you as human. So my conduct with humans is what is going to be the basis of your judgment as to whether I am an ethical and a moral individual or not, है ना? तो मैं नेचर के साथ कैसे बिहेव करता हूं, दैट इज नॉट हाउ वी ट्रेडिशनली कंसीव एथिक्स एज, ठीक है? मेरा नेचर के साथ कैसा बिहेवियर है, ठीक है? हाउ डू आई बिहेव नो विथ नेचर, और नो वेदर आई एम एन इंडिविजुअल हु प्रोटेक्ट्स नेचर, whether am I an individual who at least does not contribute to the disintegration of it or to the destruction of nature. This is not how you will conceive whether I am a moral individual or not. Okay, this is not how I behave with you, how I behave with others. Now you will look at it and then you will say, okay, this individual is a moral or this individual is not moral. This individual has ethical standards, this individual does not have ethical standards. Okay, this is how you are going to judge me. Gandhi ji was one of those individuals who brought ethical judgments, who brought ethical judgment in the field of environment or how people behave with environment. Gandhi ji was one of the first individuals. Like, if I tell you that you are a greedy individual, if I make a judgment, you are a greedy individual, you will say that, okay, a greedy individual is not necessarily moral. He is not the one who can be considered as an ideally moral individual. Now, here Gandhiji is not talking about how people behave among themselves. Gandhiji is talking about people and their behavior with environment. So he brings moral judgments as a part of how humans interact with environment. This is what he is basically saying. So that understanding the context of the quotations is one of the fundamental requirements to answer these questions. And the second is discussing it in contemporary light. Like Gandhiji made this statement before we as citizens or we as the people of the world understood, we as humans understood the need to protect environment. See, you will find that in environment you must have read about or you will read about something called as an Earth Summit in 1990s. But Gandhiji, it is 1990s wherein people, there was a general consensus with respect to saving and protecting the environment. This is something that comes in the 1990s. Clear? But Gandhiji talked about it long before. So you can understand what Gandhiji said, suppose in the 1920s, 30s, 40s, whatever, and if you interpret in contemporary light, that means even after almost 100 years, it is still relevant. So understanding it and interpreting it in contemporary light. So see this, man is but the product of his thoughts. What he thinks is what he becomes. What he thinks is what he becomes. You can understand that, first of all, what is needed to answer this? Suppose you have to write 150 words on it. So to write 150 words on it, first of all, you need to understand the statement per se. So what is the meaning of statement? What this statement, Gandhiji is promoting, Gandhiji is trying to promote this very idea that an individual should think right, because if he thinks right, he becomes right. So if an individual has moral thoughts, if the individual is ethical inside, because thoughts are something that is internal to an individual. So if the individual has moral thoughts, moral values within itself, that is something that is internal to that individual, that is what he basically is outside. So if he tries, if he thinks morally, if he has moral values, then he becomes what? A moral person. Understanding this and trying to interpret. Some questions, not all questions require discussion in contemporary light. Like this question might require discussion in contemporary light. Even this question might require the discussion in contemporary light, like you can substantiate what Gandhiji says by by giving certain contemporary examples, or by highlighting the importance of the statement by doing what, quoting certain contemporary events. You can do that. But not all quotations. Some quotations are like only just what is required is that you interpret the quotation properly. This is something that is very important, because at least 2 or 3 questions, which means at least 30 marks, at least, that is at least 30 marks out of the out of the 250 total marks that is there, you get from quotation based questions. Clear? So it is something very important. Why am I saying this? Because when we talk about the later part of our discussion, you will understand that 50% of the paper of ethics, integrity and aptitude generally is case studies. So out of the remaining 50%, which means out of 125 marks that is remaining, which is generally dedicated to the theoretical part of it, out of 125 you get 30 marks, which means somewhere around more than 20% of it is dedicated to quotations, which is a very important percentage. Clear? What is the third type of questions? Third type of questions are open-ended questions. What is meant by open-ended questions? Open-ended questions mean these questions do not have a definite answer. Now, these questions do not have a definite answer, and these questions, it requires that you give examples from your personal life or the contemporary society. You try and use the events that are going on there and try and present it as a part of your answer. Try and substantiate your answer through this. And this will do what? This will ensure, this is something that is going to ensure ensure that you are able to score here, because these are the, you can say these are the most toughest of all these questions, because here you need to give examples from personal life. So as an individual, if you are 21 years old, you have just started preparation, and you are very young. So in that 20 years of your age, around 10 years you don't have any, around the first 10 years you don't have any understanding of what ethics and morality is, and people don't judge you like that. मतलब जब मैं शुरू के 10 साल, यानी मैं क्लास 3, 4, 5 में होऊंगा, ठीक है, तब मुझे लोग बच्चे समझते हैं, और बच्चों को लोग एथिकल और मॉरल जजमेंट्स पास नहीं करते हैं. So during that initial stages of my life, I have no concerns for ethics and morality. And the later part of that is since my 10 to 20, the next 10 years that is there, I am very busy in a lot of things. Like I am busy with my career, I am busy with trying to prepare for UPSC. So I might not necessarily have done something which can be classified as outstandingly ethical or moral, because we may not necessarily be exposed to those. In that context, when you have to give examples from your personal life, suppose it is asked that what according to you, illustrate or give examples from your personal life about a particular event, which best describes what is morality or what is ethics. Now, in that case, you are only 20-25 years old. And in 2025, as I said, not necessarily we would have come across such situations. So these questions also require that you are able to understand and deal with these questions. It is one of the most toughest part, because you have to come up with material. You have to come up with material instinctively. You have to come up with material and right answers there. Clear? The fourth type of questions are indirect questions. Indirect questions, like an example of it is when public administrators invest in social capital, the outcome is good governance. Now, if you do not know what is social capital and what is good governance, you are not able to answer this question. You will not be able to answer this question. So you can see indirect question, the concepts of it, you have to borrow from other aspects of your syllabus. So from history, from polity, from constitution, from no, economy, from all such things. You have to borrow those concepts and write it as a part of your paper. So some very important concepts like social capital or good governance, these concepts which are of absolute importance, you will have to use those concepts as a part here as well. Clear? Again, this is also something that is not that easy. So you will have to work for this. You will have to work for this. And in all these cases, one thing that now you have understood is whether it comes to writing direct questions, or for that matter, whether it comes to writing indirect questions, one thing that is a must is that you need to give good examples. In this paper, if you can substantiate your examples by good examples, when I say substantiate your answers by writing examples, not writing examples that like जब बच्चे थे तो उसमें फिर सेंटेंस बनाने होता था इंग्लिश हिंदी में, और राम श्याम को लेकर हर सेंटेंस में राम श्याम लिख देते थे. Not that kind of examples. Writing examples which are substantive, using your knowledge which you read in the newspapers, examples that you read in the newspapers, and trying to do what? Trying to integrate it. Like last year there was a question, I think, or last year or 2019 there was a question in your mains examination which which dealt with something called as constitutional morality. Now it is talking about constitutional morality. Now what morality is and what constitutional morality is, they are two different things. Morality is that as a citizen, as a society, as a members of society, what we understand, what is our common understanding of what is correct, what is right, that is our concept of ethics and morality. But what is the meaning of constitutional morality? Constitutional morality means the principles that are prescribed in the constitution and the morality, the nature of morality that is prescribed in the constitution. The nature of morality that is prescribed in the constitution, like being secular, like being promoting equality, promoting justice, promoting fraternity, promoting liberty. These are the values that are provided in the constitution. So those values, following those values makes you constitutionally moral. And these two are different things. Now trying to understand that, trying to pick up that, and give good, right examples. Like when suppose the, suppose giving an example of the government of India enacting a law in 2019 providing reservation to social, providing reservation to economically backward section, or EWS, economically weaker section. Now that is an example of constitutional morality. Why? Because the Constitution of India provides for a welfare state, and in a welfare state, though all those individuals and all the kind of backwardness, all kinds of, not necessarily a single kind of backwardness, all kind of backwardness needs to be properly dealt with. There needs to be some proactive measures taken to ensure that all kinds of backwardness, whether it is social backwardness, whether it is educational backwardness, whether it is backwardness with respect to scheduled caste and scheduled tribe, or for that matter whether it is economic backwardness, all these individuals need to have or need to be given some proactive policies, proactive measures need to be taken, so that their what you can say, their concerns are taken care of. And this is very much constitutional. Article 39 of the Constitution talks about economic backwardness, and it talks about the state taking up measures to reduce inequality and bringing about an egalitarian society. So that is an example of constitutional morality. So this is what This is what I'm talking about when I say writing some very substantive examples. Writing very substantive examples. So when you are writing, when you are describing constitutional morality, and if you get an opportunity, if whatever I have said, if you are able to bring that to suppose 30 or 40 words and write it as an example of constitutional morality, the examiner is bound to give you good marks. Clear? So these are some indirect questions. I know these are the nature of questions, and obviously there is something called as case studies. So if you look at the syllabus of the GS paper 4, after all the theoretical portions have been completed, it says case studies on the above mentioned topics. So all the topics, attitude, topics of value, topics of ethics and human interface, topics of thinkers, topics of emotional intelligence, topics of ethical dilemmas, all these topics that are mentioned, you will find that the second part or section B part of your question paper that is there, it basically deals with case studies. And you are given case studies 50%, around 125 marks. It belongs to case studies, somewhere around that, not necessarily always the exact marks, but somewhere around that belongs to case studies. And handling case studies also, there are multiple ways in which you can handle case studies, but sometimes you will find that the case study also requires proper understanding of the theoretical part of it. Like if we talk about this example, you are heading the rescue operation. Again, this was also 2019, it was asked. You are heading the rescue operation in an area affected by severe natural calamity. Thousands of people are rendered homeless and deprived of food, drinking water and other basic amenities. Rescue work has been disrupted by heavy rainfall and damaged to supply routes. The local people are seething with anger against the delayed limited rescue operation. When your team reaches the affected area, the people there heckle and even assault some of the team members. One of your team members is even severely injured. Faced with this crisis, some team members plead you to call off the operation, freeing threats to their life. In such types of circumstances, what will be your response? Examine the qualities of public servant which will be required to manage the situation. So you can see this. This is very much how you approach this particular case study is very much, it is very much how you act as a civil servant. So if you approach the case study in this manner that I am going to, because there is an individual who has been severely injured, so I am going to call off the rescue operation. As a civil servant, it is not about you. It is about the people you serve. And see, though here it is mentioned, here what exactly the question wants is mentioned. Sometimes this will also not be mentioned. It will just say, in this situation, examine or elaborate the response that you are going to take place. So you can see this question requires very much is a question on the attitude of the individual. It is very much a question on the level of emotional intelligence that the individual possesses, because he is under a lot of stress. There is a pressure from the team members. You are facing pressure from team members. You are emotionally, because you know the team member who is severely injured. You know that this individual is, he is your colleague, he is your friend or something like that. So you are under that emotional stress. Your not only attitude values, your certain values that you would hold, like dedication to public service or empathy, because the local people are also not wrong while they are showing the kind of anger that they have, because they are also under a lot of emotional stress. It requires emotional maturity or emotional intelligence. So what you can do is that when you are writing such case studies, there is a requirement of what? There is a requirement of your theoretical understanding of the syllabus and using your theoretical understanding to answer the case studies. Because if here you don't use the terms of attitude, you don't use emotional intelligence, you don't talk about values of dedication to public service, empathy, compassion towards weaker section, if you don't talk about these in your case study, you are not going to score well. So that is also required. So this is the idea, which means whenever you are approaching this paper, lot of the aspirants tend to do what? They say ethics paper is all about case studies. Yes, the most important part of it is case study. But case study comprises only of 50% of the paper, which means around 125 marks. Now, if you think you are going to score under 125, if you are scoring, if you think you are going to score 100 out of 125, it is not what happens in civil services examination. You have to write the complete paper, and that is the reason why whenever you approach the paper, the strategy should not be to directly jump into case studies. Strategy should be to first of all give some time on the theoretical portion of the paper. Get a broad understanding of the paper. Try and understand the need or the requirements of the paper through the reading of theoretical portion. And then once you are very much aware about what is mentioned as a part of there, you have an understanding there, you have learned some important concepts there which you can use in case studies, then you can start with the case studies, not initially. And case studies do not comprise of the 100% of the paper. So theoretical portion is also as much important, which means you need to give a balance between, there should be a balance between the case studies that you approach and the theoretical portion that you approach. So this is the syllabus. These are the types of questions that are asked, and this is the requirement to answer questions and answer the case studies in your ethics paper. Thank you.